Anyway, and thank you for coming on this god-awful weather. But I don't start out making paintings that turn into series or start out as a series. I make paintings one at a time, and they may lead to a second painting and a third painting, etc., or they may not go anywhere other than that painting itself. And when I see that something is opening a door to another another thing that I think would be interesting to investigate, another thing that after a few paintings I realize I'm on a series of something, and then it's about trying to flesh it out. In this case, it was a thing of, started out as a scene taking place in a hotel room. What compelled me about the hotel is something that is connected to the themes in my work from the very beginning, which is, exploring where within a psychological or emotional space there's public and private interface. And, whether it's, the inside person and the interface of the flesh to the outside world, or whether it's in the case of like a hotel rooms, they're public spaces that are private spaces, night after night or day after day or something like that. But it's this kind of weird thing where you go into a hotel room and it's sort of similar to places you've lived, or it has that familiar, oh, this is a bedroom, these are sheets, this is a lamp, that kind of familiarity. It also carries with it lots of fantasy stuff, romance, and the potential of being a different person, and which is always exciting in terms of travel and stuff like that. So it seemed like, as I began to move into it, it seemed like it was opening up much bigger avenues of investigation. This show has 9 paintings in it that barely scratch the surface of what it could be. So, but anyway, that's the general thing of it. They're all different rooms in different types of hotels. The hotels are, kind of familiar spaces, but for me, I was just pulling them off of the web and then working from that.
Can I ask you, I love that idea that, first of all, you can be in some way a new person in this space as well as it's being familiar. But I notice in some of the paintings it feels like they've just had an argument, or they've just had sex, or they've just had food. In some ways, you haven't had an argument yet in that room. So it makes you a new couple in a way. It sort of has this re-enlivening aspect of being in this space.
Or it's like, oh, I thought we were going to get away from this argument.
Yeah. Just follow us.
I thought the travel would help.
New city.
I know, that's it's like, how far away from yourself can you actually get, kind of thing. Yeah. No, I know, it's a tragic comedy.
Of the picture window where your neighbors aren't going to see you. You can be completely naked, you can be completely yourself, and still not feel like you've taken the risk of being public with it.
Yeah. No, they're really interesting, complicated spaces that way, for sure. And actually, in terms of the painting of the architecture is one of the things driving these paintings. It plays a character role in it in a way that in some of my other paintings it hasn't been so present. Another aspect that it was a surprise, and you'll see it upstairs as well, is how the floor, the rug, seems to be a big character in the paintings. I'm sure you've, had these experiences in the work that you do where, as a painter, you can make anything in the painting seem to hold consciousness, right? It doesn't have to be a person. It could be a chair. It could be an apple, something where you feel like this scene is becoming meaningful as I feel this apple here, kind of thing. And the rug started to play that kind of character.
Do you have specific narratives for each one? Like, I'm sure the great thing about your narratives is that they're open.
Yeah.
And so you participate more.
Yeah, so what you should know is that I don't pre-plan the work in the sense that I go to it knowing what I'm going to paint. I start with a person, let's say it's this figure here of this woman putting a shoe back on. And that becomes a compelling moment for me, a compelling gesture, something that triggers a lot of like, okay, where was she a minute ago? Where is she go off to? Why is she dressed that way? What does that make me think about, et cetera, et cetera.
But also, why is he dressed that way?
Well, he doesn't necessarily show up right away.
Oh, so...
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. For me, my process is telling stories to myself. And they start with questions about either a character that, I'm compelled by. I don't even know why necessarily. I don't question it. I just go with it. And then I begin to flesh it out to see if I can contextualize the feelings that are coming out. So, in this case, there was something about her in this space. When I found him put him in the other room kind of thing, and the disparity between the two, both age-wise and dressed and undressed, and it creates this kind of set of like, okay, is this, what's going on here? Is this somebody? Do they know each other? Is this a couple? Is this a woman for hire? Is this what is the fantasy here? And I put the breakfast stuff in. Because I couldn't tell whether it's like, this seems like either it's, breakfast is either the beginning of the day, or in this case it might be the end of the evening, right? So it's kind of trying to set up through the title a sense of time. Where is this, a night with, ending in the morning of kind of feeling.
Well, doesn't her gesture do that also? If she's putting it on or taking it off,
yeah.
It's two totally different narratives.
Yeah, exactly. And I love how interior she is in terms of her where she is in a whole other place emotionally or psychically than where he is. He's totally elsewhere. And then, as I said, the force of the architecture begins to determine a lot of the sort of edge of the drama. This painting was, figuring out what's outside the window became one of the sort of painting problems for me. Trying to really set a space. I mean, in this painting here, behind me, it sort of moved into, a kind of Las Vegas type of landscape, a Western landscape, Western urban thing. And in this painting behind me, I had been, prior to painting it for several weeks, I got stuck on this Joe Henry song, King's Highway, which if you don't know the song, I highly recommend it because it's a song about a guy who's thinking about whether he's going to kill somebody or not. And it's where it takes you into that meditation is so real and so terrifying and whatnot, that at some point I've had this picture of this guy playing a guitar and just sort of being so in his own world playing, and it just seemed like, yeah, that's, you're in your hotel room, you're sitting there strumming your guitar, sort of digging that before you go out or before you go to bed. And then this sort of background song of, maybe this is more than that. And then it was, so I put it was recalling the place, made me feel, remember Las Vegas when the mass murder happened at that concert through the hotel that was there. And so I put the AK-47 in, but I didn't want it to be the first thing you saw, and I didn't want it, even after you saw it, to necessarily have it be only that. I wanted it to keep sort of sliding back and appearing, disappearing, but still knowing that, yeah, things have changed here. This is now a very different kind of moment. And so it was about trying to balance, how do you paint something that's there but not there, knowing that it's a super sensational or sensationalized object that you're putting in. So,
could you talk a little bit more about the architecture? Because these are high-end hotels, but they also, you paint them in a way, don't take it the wrong way, but they also can feel a little seedy in a weird way, and it's partly because the way that you're painting, has a kind of decay to it. It feels like things are falling apart. And something about this sort of the high end of that world. It's not the caricature that you're used to with noir films about the hotel space.
Yeah, I certainly wasn't thinking about it necessarily in those specific terms of trying to balance the high-end, seedy, worn-out kind of thing. I was just, it's just the nature of how I describe something. For me, in terms of a painting problem, it's always a balance of I'm telling a story, a visual story. There are things that are really important to focus on in that story. There are things that are less important. How do I balance it? Where is it that I can indicate something that you immediately accept without having to go into greater detail about? And where are other things that I really want you to, lock into? And so it's trying to say, does this do it or not do it? Is it underpainted? Is it overpainted? Did I miss the moment, the mark, et cetera, et cetera? So that's part of the language, which has to do with, for me, things like the speed in which I account something. I walk into a room, I couldn't believe that rug. It was like, had this weird glow to it, Is that the end of that description, or is it that rug just wouldn't shut up, What's going on with the rug? Oh my God, look at that guy. What's he, it sort of moves that way, right?
Well, also, when you did the series that was about art fairs, it felt like you're also using the opportunity to paint like other people. And in some ways, like the rug is like an action painting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the painting that's hung above his head also feels like it's a different language, and it sort of allows you to go into a different psychological space.
I'm particularly proud of a lot of the art that I put in these hotel rooms because
it's better than you'd find.
I was approaching it as like you can pretty much do anything because it's all shitty art anyway, right? And stuff, and then finding these clever ways of describing shitty art. It was just, I don't know, it was just something, and then I in the back of my head I thought, if my career goes south, I could be out on a strip in Las Vegas with those on the easel, you know, just $29.95 original oil paintings, yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, those are the fun problems of the painting, right? It's trying to figure out what kind of works as a, you know, a something familiar like.
Well, and I don't want to talk about the other shows too much, but there was something about those art fairs that, like, you had to do a lot of, like, investigation. Like, you can't do a bad version.
Yeah, no, you had to recognize the artists that were in the booth there. Yeah, and that's a great painting problem as well for you, is trying to figure out how do I paint a Chuck Close so it looks like a Chuck Close but also looks like an Eric Fischl painted a Chuck Close, right? Or how do you do a Oldenburg sneakers or a, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And it really, it's a great problem. I highly recommend people trying it. Why don't we go upstairs and look at some of the art up there as well? And I know you're all dying to ask questions.
I saw something.
Oh yeah?
I have one.
Oh great.
So how do you, like, you sort of like...
Wait, we got a question. Hold on a second.
When do you know when something is overpainted or underpainted? Because in some ways it's very gestural, and in other ways it's realistic. I mean, there's a real narrative here.
Yeah,
So
it's descriptive.
What's the edge?
Yeah. For me, the overpainting comes when it becomes static in a particular way. You know, you can, you know, if I'm describing, you know, sheets tossed on a bed, right? I'm looking for a way of articulating a certain set of shapes that will have some hard creases, some soft shadows, and some clear sort of weird, you know, organic geometry to it, right? Say that. It's not something that is predetermined schematic. It's something where I'm just sort of feeling it out and I'm drawing. Is this like, and there's a point at which it becomes super clumsy, overworked in a way that you can't take your eyes off it. You know, everything else falls by the wayside because you're stuck on how shitty the sheet is painted. And so it's kind of like that. It's not a formulaic thing. It's just, you know, overdone for me is when it shifts the viewer's focus, which is I'm the first viewer, so it's my focus first, where it shifts it into a place that seems to take away from something else going on in it. And oftentimes it's something where it's ugly rather than beautiful, or, you know, yeah, it's like that. I mean, all of these paintings, as I think you can hear, are things where each painting's a new painting for me. It's not that I certainly have a language that I use, but it's not something that I know how to use that language every time I paint. It's like I start painting and I begin to see, and something opens up or something, you know, falls by the wayside. But I treat each one as though, yeah, it's like I don't know how to paint this. I'm going to learn how to paint it as I go along. So.
Yeah, just, I mean, you revealed a little bit about how maybe music, when I saw these two titles, they seem in some ways killing time, playful, but also as a way to keep distance, but also a bit of humor. So, and you mentioned songs. So is that part of your sort of narrative that you get, you know, words, songs, or could you talk about that?
Well, I listen to music all the time in my studio. Usually it's like sort of singer-songwriter music. It's not that it enters my work. This painting came out of that experience in a way that others haven't. But I listen to music all the time. And the other day I was talking to somebody about why I listen to music, and I heard myself say, I listen to it so I can stop listening to myself. It's a way of of getting out of my own head so I can just paint. But it's also, it's not complicated music. It's not like listening to, you know, a Bach or something where you should listen to it, you know.
But in this case, I mean, it feels, I didn't know it was Vegas, but then when I heard that, I mean, it feels utterly brutal, and then with the text, right, with the title. I mean,
and it's, I'm not even sure it's specific to Vegas. It just reminds me of that. But it's a Vegas-like feel to it, right? And then it certainly calls up the tragedy that happened there. But yeah, let's go upstairs and see what else there is.
Didn't you also say one of the things you liked about acrylic was that you could just go back to gesso whenever you really felt like?
Yeah, you can wipe it out so
Just
fast.
wipe it out, yeah.
If it's hard to go upstairs, there's an elevator here. All right, good.
To keep that
All right.
looseness.
Yeah.
Sometimes with oil, the layers,
You're better off.
They add up, and then you're screwed. You're screwed.
But if it's acrylic, you just get out the gesso. It's basically acrylic on top of acrylic.
Very sanded.
Yeah.
And also the water, it's almost like painting with Gamsol. It's like,
Yeah. You don't want to paint with, essentially you want to paint with a medium, not with
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
In terms of developing this series, did you start with one?
Right, yeah.
And if so, which was the first?
Most of the paint is
This was the second one. I'm trying to remember whether this was the first or... I can't remember. But as I said, I don't start to paint a series. I just start to paint a painting, and and then if it leads me to something, and it's not that I'm not looking for something that I can paint several paintings on, because who wants to just keep painting one thing and having that be the end of it, right?
But do you
And
typically
so-
work on many at once?
No,
or
one
just
at a time. One at a time. Yeah. I work on one at a time, which is also why I don't interfere with the hanging of a show. I let the people who live here and know how the flow goes, and who comes and turns left as opposed to right. I let them hang the show. So, how are you? Very good. Anyway, yeah. So let's. So one of the aspects of hotels that is easily articulated is that oftentimes, each room looks the same, right? Or, has the same structure to it. And here, either end of this gallery are two paintings that appear to be in the same room or on the same floor or whatever. Is it the same time or just different times, but two different things going on in the same space, which is something that has always attracted me as a structure. This one over here is titled October 7th, which is a very specific date for a huge tragedy, that one of those tragedies that just changed a lot of your world, like 9/11 or something like that. And this is the next day kind of thing. That and I was interested in two different things. One is in this painting here. I was struck by the woman who's standing there, all dressed to go out, in a very sort of fabulous outfit, and it's at nighttime. It could be it feels more like she's on her way out than she's just come back. But it's something where it seems like she's either going to meet some fabulous people and do fabulous things, or she's going to, the gala for whatever, blah, 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 something, or maybe even going to meet somebody. Whatever it is, she seems frozen in space. And if you look closely at her, the way her hands are clasped around the TV remote, the sort of grimace on her face, she's clearly looking at the TV at something that is freezing her in the moment. And what I was compelled by in that is that when external events happen that on the scale of world changing, what do you do next? Are you not dressed properly for how the world just changed? How do you deal with, how do you confront it? Your life is thrown into relief as everybody else's is. What do you do? And it felt like that was the moment here in a totally safe environment too. It's not that she's where it was happening.
She almost looks like she could topple over. Like there's something about her tension. That
Yeah.
looks like she's not going to take a step, but she could fall.
Yeah. And in this painting, which appears to be the same kind of room, whatever. It's it's another day. It seems like it's light outside rather than dark, and you don't know whether they're just arrived at the hotel or they're all packed and ready to go. This seems to be more specific to a relationship between within a family dynamic than it does to be anything external to that. And so it's just a completely other type of moment.
Did you see them as moving on? That basically the next day is the next day. You're going to go to work, or you're going to leave the hotel, or your life is just...
Yeah, and with them I couldn't necessarily tell whether they even knew what had happened the night before. And it seemed like they were self-contained in whatever it was, so it felt more like that. But that next day definitely has that. We're either heading home or we're heading on to the next hotel and for our big trip. Yeah. But in terms of painting stuff, I have to say that I was pleased with my Mizzoni pants here. One thing I hate to do is paint elaborate patterns in detail. But it's such a seductive, attractive painting problem to figure out, because they're clearly a part of who that person is. So I needed to capture that sense. And I feel pretty good about the way I found the abbreviation for signifying Mizzoni pants, But if you saw them in real life, you'd go, wow, that is so simplified.
Can you talk a little bit about when you moved from oil painting to acrylic and what made you make that decision?
All right.
It's a while now, right? It's got to be at least 15 or 20 years.
No.
Oh, no?
No. When I was first starting out as an art student, I painted acrylic.
Oh.
This is 1967, 68. And I was painting, sort of abstract paintings. And then I discovered oil paint, and I never looked back until COVID. And somehow COVID shook me in a way that it felt like I don't have that much time left. I don't know whether I have, what kind of time. Now I'm in that place of uncertainty in terms of that. So I felt I needed to commit to doing things that I was putting off in painting, which again is about I was trying to. Let me go back up. I do drawings and watercolors. Drawings are oil on paper drawings or whatever. They're incredibly sort of loose and direct and pleasurable and stuff. The watercolors I do are, sort of finding descriptive, gestural descriptions of figures without being able to control all of the medium itself. And there's something that tension between control, out of control, letting the medium do what it does, me trying to do what I want it to do, et cetera. It's a great way of engaging materials. I was never able to bring that more fully into the paintings themselves. There's an authority that paintings have that it's harder to dismiss. It's harder to get past certain aspects of, what to ignore or to leave alone, or what to, finish off in some recognizable finished way. And it was always a struggle. And then COVID happened, and now I'm sitting there thinking, man, I need to move a little quicker here. So I decided I would, go to acrylics to sort of establish in very loose ways the space in which I'm painting. And I would just pour like I would a watercolor or something, pour, sort of describe very loosely something. I always felt that I could do that, maybe then go back in with oil paint, and certainly for the figure I would need to do oil paint, because I couldn't imagine, being able to paint the figure in the same way that I did with oils. And so I did that a little bit at first, and then finally I did one painting that was all acrylic, and the figure looked fine. And I thought, wow, okay, I can be an acrylic figure painter, and that was that. And the thing about the acrylics that I like in terms of my process is that, there's a lot of other things in these paintings that are covered over, that I am feeling my way through what I'm trying to say, what I'm thinking about, what I'm feeling. And so I do something, for example, in this painting here, there's a whole other figure underneath her, a whole other gesture. There's only one dog, and that dog was bigger, and, et cetera, et cetera. The thing that was constant in this was the room that this was taking place in. That seemed to be right, but everything else was like up for grabs. And once I found her, it pulled it together in terms of how I was engaging this moment, and it was about you just gesso over the figure before and just paint back into it. It's like no big deal, and with the oil paintings, it's scraping it off, or it's having to dry this or that, et cetera, et cetera. It takes longer to kind of cover over the ghosts. I once did a painting, speaking of ghosting, I did this huge painting that started out as a standing figure of a man with a big paper mache chicken head.
I don't remember that one.
No, because it never saw the light of day. It was something I did, and then I was like, well, that was dumb. And so I painted over it, and I ended up painting this painting of an imaginary, like a portrait of a family, but it totally made up, who the guy was, who the woman was, the kid, the nanny kind of thing. Anyway, that made it out into the world. And my dealer at the time, Mary Boone, calls me a few years later saying, the collector who bought that painting keeps seeing a ghost of like something.
That's a chicken head?
It's like, they think it's like a chicken or something. I was like, oh, fuck. And, would you possibly paint it out again? And I was like, I'm not so certain of my technique that I could actually match the colors and do that. So I said I would do it, but they have to know that it might change. That in the painting it out, they said okay. And so I repainted a lot of that painting to get that fucking chicken head out of there.
It'd be beautiful to have it with the chicken.
What?
It'd be beautiful to have it with the chicken.
Yeah, right, yeah. The ghost of, no.
Were you making a Vermeer quote here at all? Or just an art historical nod?
I think it's more of a nod, and not even a closer nod would be to a painting that Ang did of a woman sitting on the edge of a bed with her back to you in a turban and stuff. Again, that wasn't forefronted. It was something that when I found her and as I was painting and stuff with the light, it all started to resonate. But yeah. And for me, again, I feel like I'm talking to painters, so I can say all this stuff. And somebody was asking about overworking, right? You were saying overworking, right? The reason the figure that's not here is no longer here was because I overworked it. The source material I had, I couldn't get the hair right. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. So that was the reason to get rid of it. But in terms of the rhythm of painting and as I'm sort of feeling my way in and talking to myself about it and stuff like that, certain things happen like this, which has no sort of anatomical description attached to it at all. It just it's not right in any way other than it's right. And it's about sort of trusting that moment. I mean, you see some of that in the hand where it's definitely not overworked, but it allows the paint to describe something in a way that you completely accept that this is what you're looking at. This is back, arm, etc., hand, blah, blah, blah. And that's where the thing I keep trying to develop for myself as a painter is being able to recognize it, leave it, trust it, let it carry the weight of the moment. I also recommend you come up and look at the dog's eye because it's only 2 brush strokes and it's got such a vivid stare to it that I love the way the dog and the woman are looking exactly having the same thoughts about who we are in this room,
Side eye.
Huh?
The side eye.
Yeah, the side, yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, that's the other thing that, painting narratives. As artists creating them, you say, okay, where am I in this? Where am I in this moment? Are they aware that I'm here? Are they not aware? Am I intrusive? Is my stare intrusive or is it witness? And those are 2 very different states of articulation. And so, exactly what is that? In this case, the way she and the dog are both arresting you in the moment. There's a standoff of some kind as the questioning is there as to, who are you, what do you want, why are you here? Those kind of things seem very present. And and then trying to balance sort of that intensity with something where this creature doesn't seem to notice at all that something might be going on. those are dramatic tools that I used, yeah.
So, like so far in the paintings, the bottom half, the corners, you use to put in forms that add to the narrative, like questions about it, right? Like the luggage over there.
Yeah, suitcases, yeah.
Suitcase there. There's a lot of empty, it's not empty, but there's a lot of.
Yeah. Yeah, I think part of that, trying to get away with that, had to do with also the intensity of this here, was keeping you in this area, which is where it was all happening. If I had done something here, it would have been a release. It would have been, now I'm going to go away from, whereas this, if you go away, you go out. And so, again, that's, was something I feel my way into as a compositional thing. Can I pull it off? Could I pull off an empty in the sense of no description, just a kind of color flash or something?
So you've talked about painting problems, but maybe this is a follow-up question to what you just asked. Are there passages of the painting that you know you're just going to enjoy painting because it's more about paint than description?
Yes, in terms of challenges. For example, I had a photograph of this room that I'd taken with a very strong light kind of thing, and this sort of multicolored, side light thing to it. So that became like something that I thought would be, fun to paint in the sense of a compelling challenge to do it. But, but in terms of, usually I try to find ways of making it all ultimately fun to paint. Like the Mazzoni pants or something, finding the language that doesn't kill me.
Yeah, but I also know, for somebody that started with abstraction in particular, you have a tendency to look for things, whether they're clouds or walls or certain light patterns, to like bring out the abstract, the Hans Hofmann in you, or the, Pat Steer or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I certainly think I'm glad that I started as an abstractionist, because that abstraction teaches you structure. It teaches you, the bones of whatever compositional thing you ultimately paint, and it's something that I like doing. I was not a good abstract painter in the sense that I had no originality to my approach to it. It wasn't a natural fit. It was something, obviously I was a student at the time too, so it was imitative. But I was the kind of abstract painter that if I picked up a 4-inch brush, well, that's the brush it had to be to paint the whole fucking painting. It's like, you can't, I'm gonna just paint this. I can't go back in and dot. I can't change the language that I'd set up. Mm-hmm. I was completely inhibited by all that. And so I, finally realized that that's not my natural thing. But to bring, sort of geometry of structure and stuff into a composition seemed necessary anyway.
That nightscape, that's beautifully painted. And it's kind of slash and burn painting.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that it's beautifully painted. Before you said slash and burn.
Sorry about that. Well, I consider Sorolla a slash and burn painter.
No. Yeah, there is a tradition of it.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions for you.
Yes.
So you're very, very good at using color to kind of layer the space. Like, that blue of the sheet behind that dog is like exactly a foot behind him or something. It just looks like it's effortless. Are you consciously trying to do that, or is it intuitive? Because your work feels very intuitive also.
Yeah. I would say that I treated it in a way that I laid it back there simply.
Mm-hmm.
If I started to fuss with it, it would start to move forward and collapse the space.
Okay, you
So it
would
would
go
be
back
something
to-
where I would have to paint it out and start over again with it, right? Because of that. But in
Do you do that? Do you do that sometimes?
oh yeah, all the time. Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And the thing is, I don't have a sense of atmosphere. I can't paint atmosphere. I can paint things that feel like they're occupying spaces, but it's not an atmospheric surround kind of thing. It's light filled. It's stuff like that. But
I think it's a very Eric Fischl atmosphere. And you have,
Okay,
you
so-
definitely have an atmosphere, but it's a very unique.
Yeah, well, what I mean is I wouldn't describe it as atmosphere that way. I mean, I think it has dramatic effect. If you look at my paintings, you see that the figures are all coming from different light sources. I'm not religious about, it has to all be defined by this, whether it's this and this, et cetera. It's more about, can I make it work in a way that people aren't questioning that part of it? They're just accepting the drama that's happening. So.
Yeah. And who are the models this time?
They vary. I mean, some of them are literally models that I've hired and taken photographs of. Some of them are captured, unwittingly captured on in public spaces and stuff like that, and beaches and things. This woman behind me came from the web.
Those guys came from.
They came from photos I took in Italy, different times, different places. I just thought it'd make for an interesting. And when we go in this room, you'll see this painting that's straight ahead of us. The biggest problem I had was trying to get past Alyssa's painting.
I could have come in and just helped you out.
You could have. I was trying to see if I could find a way to, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to knock you down here. Anyway,
I love this painting, but it's the most confusing painting.
it's what is going on here? Yeah, no, this painting is really pushed to a limit. It was something where, because I couldn't, it felt right and real to me, but I didn't know how I could put everything together. Even though it was hanging together, it seemed like it was hanging together by something that I couldn't tell why it was hanging together, because it shouldn't.
I love the fact that there's 3 different types of dripping.
Yeah.
There's dripping wet, there's paint
There's
dripping.
paint dripping, and
and
then there's
shower
suds. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a very strange moment.
Like
And
there's a gun missing in there somewhere.
you think there's, yeah, probably. And that doesn't look like a killer dog. So it's not going to happen that way.
There's something that the dog is seeing that we can't see.
Yeah.
There's a 4th person, you think, somewhere?
Something has got the dog's attention. It looks like it's,
Yeah, it's alert.
behind this guy.
Yeah. Yeah, when people went from a distance when they sort of say, oh, I saw this painting, and they thought that guy on the bed was older than I thought he was. And when I get up, look at it close, I'm looking at a teenager, and so I'm looking at a possible scene where, between a father and a son kind of thing. There's some kind of intrusion that's clearly here, an interruption, because the father's, or the adult male is, obviously jumped out of the shower, covering himself, kind of what the fuck, what,
But then the
you
mother
know,
looks quite a bit younger.
kind of
probably
thing.
a
What's
stepmom.
that?
The
Yes,
mother looks quite a bit
and then you
younger.
have that, and so it brings in a like, okay, so what's going on in that triangle
Yeah.
thing here and stuff
She's
like that.
probably closer in age to the son than
Yeah,
to the father.
and are they brother and sister? Is it another thing? It's you know, it gets wanky fast. Yeah. Yeah. And
What's it called? What are you talking about?
I forgot.
Standoff.
Standoff.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
there you
it's
go.
pretty literal. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it seemed, I mean, for me, this looks like a hotel in the Southwest kind of thing. It's got that kind of feel outside. And obviously the door's open, it's hot enough, whatever. And we've certainly had these moments where, a family traveling, they're in different rooms, kids come over, just walk in kind of thing. So there's that kind of sense of, I belong here even though it's not my room type of interruption. But at the same time, it doesn't explain what's going on the other side. And
No, but it's funny, like you deal with plausibility frequently where that seems like it's a disruptive thing, but they could have a connecting room that has the same terrace. And
Yeah.
they could have just walked in thinking,
Yeah.
yeah, this is fine,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I got the feeling from the kid that he belongs there.
Yeah.
He feels like, not that it's his room, but that he belongs there.
Yeah.
And it just maybe the moment's not right. So, anyway.
So in almost every single one of your paintings, there's a couple of figures that really hold the painting. And you mentioned that you don't come into the painting with a plan, but you also commented that you do have some source material from photos that you are there. You've taken yourself, or you've made, I don't know if you've flipped to magazines and also find interesting sources. But do you start the painting from a figure that you're interested in flipping through photos? Do you sketch and find yourself into, I really like this, let's make it into something?
Yeah.
And do you ever find yourself in a position where like, okay, I have this mature man, I have the teenage guy, I really need the model there, so then you are forced into taking photos and do a photo shoot, or how does that play into your
No,
process?
they all existed in photos
Before. So
before. It's just about going through and seeing if this works. Now, so the thing is about the photos. Why do I take photos? A long time ago, I realized that, one, I lacked the ability to tell a model what to do. And so a model would take a pose, which bored the shit out of me, because poses are an abstraction of the body, a whole other thing. They're on the eros side rather than the thanatos side of life. My work comes out of the thanatos side. So I couldn't tell models what to do. When I saw people, I found myself in public, I would see somebody doing something and I'd be riveted by it. But I'm not quick enough a sketcher to capture all the information I would need to translate that into a painting. But a camera would capture it, right? So I would, if I had a camera, which I would certainly try to always have when I was traveling, take that photo. Then when looking at either before, Photoshop, when it was just real photos, I'd go through my photos and the same thing would happen. I would find as I'm flipping through, this one fascinated me. So I learned over time that that's a clue. Start with that, right? You don't have to know why it does. You just start with it, right? And then you build out from there, trying to contextualize it. So the paintings are all ways of contextualizing something that grabbed my attention. And now I'm activating it, animating it, and re-examining it. And the thing about, for painters working from life or nature, etc., it's very easy to become obsessed with the details of nature. It's actually so seductively appealing. It triggers that I can see more here. I can keep seeing it. I can capture it. I can nail it. I can do it. And it's amazing when one does. The thing is, it can often take you to something that just looks like nature, just looks like the real thing, right? The same thing happens with photography, where you're looking at it and that same trigger happens where it's like, okay, I can see more here, there's more. The difference between real and photo is that photo is already a codified mechanical thing that has abbreviations to it. If you follow it to its end, which happens sooner than when you're following nature to its end, you end up with something that looks like a photograph, right? So neither one of those things appeal to me in terms of my practice, but I need the information. I need a certain amount of information to make something seem like, this thing is there in a very real way. So it's about how do I, pull stuff out from the photograph that gives me enough detail to make it real without closing it down as a photographic reality kind of thing. And so it's that's a training thing I've learned over time, where what do I need, what do I not need. I've tried many years ago to just do black and white photos, so I would have to add the color. That didn't work so good either. I'm not that, there's something else that I'm looking for in flesh than I was able to just imagine onto it and stuff, so.
Can you talk a little bit about, it's not an absolutely seamless space that you create. You seem to want to have some part of the artifice be a part of the picture so that you're aware that there's a system going on almost.
Mm-hmm.
You can make Photoshop documents look absolutely flawless, but that's not really interesting.
Yeah, I once worked with a guy he was trying to fool the CIA, and I wasn't, and he was developing a print for me, and he kept taking it into this down to every fucking pixel thing, and I was like, I don't care about that, And at one point when I started to do Photoshop myself, I would cut out and then I would try to erase the cutout to get to the edge of the flesh, and then at some point I thought, who the fuck cares about that? It's a collage, for God's sakes, So I was playing around with that artifice as you're talking about. Yeah, I'm compelled by how, first of all, how abstract painting actually is for all of us who paint, and how remarkable it is that it can approach something that feels not abstract. It feels and captures some deeply real thing. Yeah. And then it's the process of how you do that and where the balance is. And clearly I don't have the patience to be obsessive and detailed and, in certain ways. What I have is a sense of gestural time. If I could do this all one painting in just one swoop, and it was like some kind of magic cartoon, I'd be very happy with that. Yeah.
Simultaneously, you seem very committed to present situations that are very down to earth. You're never artificial in the narrative. You're not doing a surrealism. You're not doing the scene seems like something absolutely plausible. Yeah. Even if in examination I was the shadow doesn't match, as you were saying. But you seem to also be very committed to a very naked sense of reality.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't you?
Yeah. Yeah, and naked's a good word. Love that naked. Yeah.
Where's the Caribbean piece? Isn't there?
The what?
the
Yeah, it's
Caribbean?
down as you go outside.
okay.
It's in the office.
That's sort of like the sweet spot. Like there's a tenderness to that one that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, it was. I was calling my therapist right away. I think I've got a breakthrough here.
There's love.
Yeah, I can't believe it. They're actually touching each other.
No, but it's also they're very exposed and they seem at the same time completely safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know where to take that one, but anyway.
Take a look.
Yeah, no, for sure. Please take a look at it.
In a scene like this, you would have all of these photos before the painting. Like or would you just like?
I have in my computer, in my photos, I have 50,000 photos. So, it's like if this changed a lot as I felt out where the hell it goes. You can tell what didn't change. This didn't change, right? This didn't change. Parts of this didn't change. It's like something where I nailed it enough that's fine. I don't, it works for light. It works for carpet. It's fine. Figuring out this. The bed there was no one on the bed for a while. It just goes through this set of things where I'm looking for something that I don't know what I'm looking for. I know how to look for it, which is this thing of creating situations that are evocative and provocative and stuff. And then it's about seeing if I can piece it together. So, these photos were all from different times. They're in my photo thing, and this photo is, in a folder with the name of the model that's on it, so I can, go right to that. This guy was walking down a beach in Saint-Tropez, in St. Bart's, 22 years ago or something like that, and so. But it was like I remember that moment. This was from a photo I did. A German family wanted me to do a portrait of the family, so I took a bunch of photos. Then they didn't want to do a portrait, but I had the photos, so the kid shows up a few times. He's a perfect teenager, kind of.
Lanky.
Yeah, lanky and whatever. Yeah. Anyway, I forget where the dog came from, but they're easy to find and stuff. So it's like that. This painting behind you, it actually is the same woman there toweling off that was in the thing here. They don't look like the same person, but the gesture's the same. And the gesture is what I was after. The guy comes from a photo I took in Italy somewhere. So, and so they're all different sources, right?
Did anybody ever walk in and say, "Hey, that's me"?
Yeah. Yeah, it's my worst nightmare, right? And especially if I have to give them money or something. No, I've had a few that recognize themselves, and I did an art fair painting where there was I did several art fair paintings, and the people were real in there, and so people would see themselves, or their friend would see and then tell them. There was that. But yeah. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of your paintings seem to me have a level of cinematography in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if you sometimes struggle with keeping the narrative ambiguous enough to get away from the specificity that you want to avoid.
What is the specificity I want to avoid?
Like a scene that is so specifically one narrative that people can just see right out of it.
Yeah.
If it's a movie, they're having a conversation.
Yeah. No, my goal in all my work is to bring something down to a frozen moment, which is what painting does. It brings you down to a frozen, captured moment, but captured in a way that opens it back up as you begin to look at it and have your associations with it, right? So I don't quite know how you were talking about in terms of cinematography, but I grew up looking at TV and movies and magazines long before I saw painting. So my basic knowledge about structuring things comes out of that. Plus, cinema is where narrative went when it left painting. So you have to kind of go back to it and see if you can pull something back that doesn't kill painting by showing it as an old technology, an old idea, but actually can use a lot of what cinema came up with. And not just cinema too, but also theater. I mean, in theater, there's a way of dramatizing something that barely hangs on reality in terms of scenery and stuff, lighting, those kind of things. So you can use that in painting as well. But yeah, it's trying to find exactly where that moment is, that you can stop it knowing there's a lot of meaningfulness in that moment, even though it's not defined yet by words. If I can create an experience for the viewer where they have to supply the words, then I've been successful. And the reason they have to define, find the words and provide those words for themselves is because it's a meaningful space. They're having actually an experience. Experiences come before we know how to talk about them. And so it's like trying to get to that place. So.
What do you think of, just talking about how narrative left painting when it's filmmaking, but what about the photographers like Crutzen and Cindy Sherman and Leventhal and Jeff Wall? They sort of had a way of legitimizing narrative in pictures, right? Mm-hmm. And in a way that I felt like they helped, as well as you and the pictures generation too, to start thinking about narratives again, to not be ashamed of narratives. Like storytelling is a huge thing.
Yeah. Well, certainly in the case of Cindy and Greg, they didn't shy away from the quoting the cinema kind of thing in a very direct way. Walls was a little bit, more ambiguous as to where that thing, whether it was just straight photography or something. But yeah, no. I think the meditation is more on why did it leave painting to begin with, and because it certainly was taken over by the new technologies, and why is that? What was it? And I've sort of written about and lectured about the disappearance of the figure, and it. To me, it's a compelling, 150-year history of stuff where, if you think of Rodin as the generally considered the last great Romantic era sculptor of flesh, bone, muscle, right? He was an artist that absolutely believed without a doubt that the body could carry and express meaning, that it could express its emotions. So he could actually chop the body up into small parts, and it would still, you'd know what the body was feeling, right? So it was, that confidence that the body and the people inside those bodies could outwardly express something changed. It changed in terms of the sort of narratives of the 19th century played out and in time got very tired, very cliched. that was an impetus for getting rid of the narrative part of it, etc., but not necessarily the excuse for getting rid of the body. But then, you know, obviously there was interest in the kind of discoveries in science and things like that that move past what the body looks like to a physical reality we can't see. It goes into atoms and to, you know, the new technologies, the, you know, microscopes and stuff. And the artists sort of allowing that to inform their language begins to paint an unseeable world. The next sort of generally considered giant in the world of sculpture is Giacometti. And Giacometti is now a body that can no longer express itself. It chews itself, it eats itself away, because it can't actually do what a body can do. It can't bend, twist, turn, move, pick up, hold, grab, you know, hug, you know, fuck, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, it's there, and the anxiety and everything, you know, the isolation, existential experience is one that eats it away, and that's the beginning of the end of the body as a physical thing. You know, Giacometti was anorectic in his vision of the world, right? Not that he personally was, but just the vision was. And when the body starts to come back, it comes back as reproduction. It comes back as plaster casts, right? Now that's a very different kind of thing, and even though George Siegel was doing narratives, they were so literal because a plaster cast only captures what's there. So the creative imagination part of it, that is the expressive part of it, is no longer attached. They can't make bigger feet like Rodin could, you know, distort the shapes and everything and still hold it within the sense of real. But the reproduction, you have that with John DeAndrea or I'm blanking
Hansen.
the other. Huh?
Hansen.
Yeah, exactly, Dwayne Hansen. Where it's so literal.
And even Kiki Smith at first was really, it's body casting. So Bob Taplin wrote a really beautiful piece called The Figure, Live or Dead. And it's all about how casting a figure limits its interpretive power.
Yeah, yeah. And then, yeah, and you see that too in painting where it shows up in reproduction. You know, Warhol, for example, being a good example of reproduction, etc. So it was something where they were wanting to use the body as image, not the body as what the life of a human, right? And then after reproduction comes dolls, you know, and it becomes a whole other thing. Dolls and puppets and mannequins and stuff that are, you know, take on a whole other reality to it, but. Anyway, so for me, trying to figure out how to get the body back into the experience in art and try to get it connected to a narrative that has a kind of emotional and psychological resonance to it. It feels real, even though the language of describing it is not real.
One thing, you know, de Kooning has that essay, The Renaissance in Order. He talks about how in the Renaissance they showed, first of all, multi-figures, and secondly, people doing something. And that, you know, you sort of lost that when people stopped painting that and sort of just portraiture and then, you know, abstraction. So one thing that makes your painting so narrative is that there's more than one person there. There's, you know, there's the person and the dog, you know, there's interaction. So there's, you automatically have people doing something and also interacting.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've certainly done paintings that have crowds in them as well. That you know, and trying that it's a great problem. You all should try to do it. Figure out how to make a crowd feel, you know, real in some way. You know, give everybody their own personality and still see how they hang or don't hang together and stuff like that. But But the thing is that, painting structure, you put a single person in a scene. If they're not paying attention to you, the viewer, that's one relationship that you, the audience, has to the scene, right? If that person, like the woman in that painting there, turns and catches your eye, now you have a very different thing going on, a very different narrative moment going on in which you're implicated in it. If you put 3 people in, again, it's a different kind of triangulation, and you can decide, is one of those people aware that there's a 4th person present, or is it just those 3? But these on a purely technical level are all painting problems, to set up and then see where you go with them. And because each one takes you to a different place, both as a painting problem and also as an emotional, psychological articulation and stuff. So,
Hey, I just realized we've taken up 2 hours of your time. So
thank God.
Extremely generous of you. Anyway.
Yeah, it's not like I could go on all day, but I could go on all day.
Can I ask, on this thing, there's no gesso on this one? Is that just...
There's no paint on there, it's just gesso. Yeah, and this painting I was, it started out the way I had started the painting, which was to sort of wash in something, sort of indicate to myself something that may be a cityscape feel to it, kind of create some architectural thing, blah, blah, blah. I was letting the paint wash, et cetera, and then I was going back in with the figures and stuff, and not thinking that I would be able to leave it, but just that I would now go to there and then see if I could leave it. And then there were things that happened, like this wash at the bottom was so rug-like that I thought, oh my God, I don't have to do anything more to that. That's fantastic, right? And this orange shape here, it describes nothing, and yet it totally works. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to leave that. And what was going outside the window felt like so specific to a seasonal kind of view out that window, and the city was implied enough that you accepted it, and so I left that too. So this painting has probably the largest sort of stretch between the gestural and the descriptive.
And your favorite among all these, if I may ask? If you have one.
Yeah, I don't have one. I love all my children. They're all just different. Yeah, no, I don't. As you just saw, what I like is that there are things in each one that I'm very happy with. I think, oh yeah, I think as painters you can appreciate that experience. So.
Will we have the lecture of the body in the academy anytime soon? The one
you just had
a
it.
lecture in the fall.
You have to go back with that, and you become it, the lecturer. Yeah. Yes, I know. I am. Yeah. I love the academy. So, thanks. And on your way out, pop your head in the office on the right side as you go out. There's that tender painting in there.
I like that it's the last one as you leave. You're left with a little hope,
Yeah.